You know, it's,
Me too.
yeah, but it seems.
Do you have any ice cream colors this year?
Nope. That was the most place put it in like, you know, our of the new one.
So the software they
The name, I don't know. Oh, yeah, I know.
Good evening. We'll call this public hearing to order. How do you all do? I'm Richard Howard, not too newly installed town manager, 90 days into it, so. My first pass at this particular procedure, though, and hopefully we'll be able to move folks along and not go on too long, but we'll give a thorough review of each of these articles proposed for the warrant at town meeting. I can see many of the proponents here of the various articles that are listed, approximately 34 in length. And beginning with Article 1, we will hear from proponents first, and then any members of the public would like to comment. To hear and act upon reports of town officers and finance committee, or to take any other action in relation thereto. We have a particular proponent, and there are, I should mention that, there are products here for anybody's edification. And I know that particular article is kind of a catch-all placeholder for town meeting activity, so we don't have a particular proponent. Other than the board, we'll pass on that. Move on to Article 2. And actually, Article 2 and 3 are somewhat in combination. And I see members from the Historic Commission here to speak on behalf of those articles. If you'd like to step forward, and right there would be good. Either of those microphones, yep. I think they have you here, so. But however, Jack, however you feel more comfortable making your address, if you want to try that and look that way, that's fine. Or you can come up here and sit next to me if you like. How's that? It is lonely up here, so.
How much time would you?
Whatever you think you need, Jack, is fine, but
Perhaps it,
the summary of the two articles are
Yeah.
a proposal by the Winchester Historical Commission, the gist of which is to include additional housing inventory within Winchester, and specifically all housing constructed before, during or before 1945, to be included in the one-year time period, staying period for demolition of structures. That's the essence of it, Jack? And
Demolition delay, yes.
Demolition delay.
Right.
And go ahead and give us.
The primary tool that the Winchester Historical Commission has to preserve and protect the historical heritage of this town, which is most obvious in its homes and in its commercial buildings, is what we call the demolition delay, which is Chapter 14 of the town bylaws. It gives us the opportunity for those houses and commercial buildings that are covered under the terms of the law when people come to the building inspector and ask for a demolition permit for whatever reason, if the house or building is protected, they must come before the Historical Commission to tell us why they want to demolish it, and we listen and we debate and we discuss it with them. And we have the opportunity at that time to impose a one-year delay on that demolition for the purpose of, if you will, a cooling off period to give people a chance to think about it, or maybe come up with alternative ideas to demolishing what we see as a historic treasure of this community. Typically what happens, however, is that the opportunity to bring the owner in and talk with us, we are able to consider help get the owner to consider other alternatives to demolition, such as renovation. And in those instances where the owner is not interested in an alternative, the owner, at the conclusion of the 1-year delay period, has the right to do whatever he or she wants with that property, including demolishing it. So it is at best a temporary injunction, if that's not a stretch to use that legal term. And that is the extent of our capability. Right now, the properties that are protected by the Historical Commission under terms of this law number 702. Winchester has a grand total of over 8,400 properties in town, so this represents about 12% of all properties. We have seen in the last 10 years 65 or more properties which we would judge to be historical be demolished in this town. Most recently, a very painful property was number 21 Warren Street. If you're familiar with that house at the corner of Warren and Oxford Street, it was torn down. It was not, we had no say over it. It was a 90-year-old house, 90-plus-year-old house. It was a beautiful example of the era, built by a noted architect by the name of Blakey, and it was unprotected. A developer bought the property. It was a large enough lot that it could be subdivided, and he has since built 2 very large houses that are completely out of character with that neighborhood. Not only did we lose a treasure, an architectural treasure, but we also lost a unique corner of the flats, which will never be the same again, in our lifetimes at least. And this is very upsetting to, of course, the neighbors who came to us up in arms, and understandably, and we were kind of had our arms tied behind our backs on that one. So this effort to rope in some of those houses that we can't protect is the point of this request. We did our homework. We surveyed about 25 different towns and cities, mostly in eastern Massachusetts, those that had demolition delay bylaws, and to judge how they measure their houses, or what they determined to be worthy of protection. And it's all over the map. It's everything from one extreme where towns like Lexington or Nantucket or Concord, everything is covered. If you file a demolition permit, you have to come before the Historical Commission, period. Nantucket is an extreme example because you can't even change the color of your house, or change the shutters on your house, or change the window style without the permission of the Historical Commission. We're not asking for those kinds of powers. The other more common measure is what we call a rolling deadline, 50 years, 75 years, 100 years, and various towns have that. So in other words, a 50-year deadline would be anything built 1962 or earlier. And I'm kind of embarrassed to say, it doesn't seem that long ago to me. So other towns have a set date, and 45, 40, 29, what have you. We felt that 1945 was appropriate in judging by the housing stock that's in this town and what was built in this town since then. And so that's what we're asking for town meeting to approve, is to allow us to expand that coverage to 1945, everything built during or before 1945. The Article 3 is somewhat unrelated to that. However, what we're really doing is clarifying and improving the procedure, the application procedure, and then more important, I think, in the second part of this is our section 3.6, which spells out very specific criteria by which property will be judged whether it's worthy of preservation. And we do spell out architectural, historical, geographic, what's the other one, Charlene? Without me, don't make me look.
Historic, architectural, and geographic.
Historic, architectural, and geographic, and we're very specific in there. And the reason for that is to erase any sense that there's arbitrariness in our decisions. We judge each property by this criteria, and we want the property owners to have that and understand that themselves, so that if they don't feel, for instance, that their property fits any of those criteria, they can make a case to that. But as I say, at the end of the day, the demolition delay is just that, it's a delay. And ultimately, the property owner's free to do what they wish to do with it.
As Jack has mentioned, the proposal is to amend Chapter 14 and the various sections pertaining to the provisions that Jack has talked about. So it's a very good summary. If there's anybody from the public here that would like to,
I just have a question as to what's the enabling legislation that permits, that would permit demolition delays based upon just the date of the house, as opposed to historic districts?
There is,
Well, if it's 40C, to me that, I believe 40C pretty much applies to historic districts and the state and national register. So what I'm wondering is that this additional provision, while it doesn't seem to be reaching that much, do we change the demolition delay to something other than, are we creating a different process here?
no, the process is the same. All we're doing is adding, and I'm sorry, I neglected to add how many properties we're adding to the list. We now have 702. This will add approximately, and again, this is only an approximate number, but I think it's pretty close, 2,664. That represents less than 40% of all properties in this town. I'm sorry, I don't know the specific answer to your question. The member of our commission who would is not here tonight.
Or just to cut to my chase, is that if it's under well, what would be 48, the zoning, as opposed to historic districts, then I'm wondering if maybe for the process, it wouldn't be better to actually have the selectmen be the ones who make that decision, as more or less as the town's zoning enforcement officer, or not. But
It's not under 48.
so, okay,
It's not.
all right. Is it under 40C though?
Folks, I'm going to ask if, because we want the commentary to go over a year or two, it might be helpful when we are going to have prolonged, I don't mind the going back and forth, it's just that we might need a microphone is what I'm getting at, so the viewing public can entertain it as well, so. But, point well taken, and
Well,
it may be something that would come up at town meeting, so. it might be an
perhaps.
answer.
Yeah, I'm not entirely sure, what you're saying, but the Board of we are ultimately responsible to the Board of Selectmen. We are the advocates on behalf of the Board of Selectmen. Mr. Howard appoints us. We are for 3-year terms. So we are more or less their surrogates in managing this particular aspect of town government.
Other questions for the proponent? If you would do me the favor of trying to use these microphones right up here.
You want me to come here?
If you would, please. And a name and address would be helpful as well. Sure, you all know each other. I don't know many of you yet. That's all.
My name is John Natale. I live at 45 Chester Street. A couple of questions. Are we now saying there's about 2,700 homes that are going to be covered by these two bylaws?
Mm-hmm.
How many members do we have on the Historical Commission?
7.
7. All appointed by the manager.
Mm-hmm.
What's so magical, if there's anything magical about the 1-year delay? Why not? I'm very much concerned that we're infringing on property rights, and I'm worried about creep. Today, you're not worried about window styles and paint, but tomorrow you might be.
Mm-hmm.
And you might raise the 1 year to 2 years or 5 years or deny it entirely. And, there's a Fifth Amendment clause about takings. And I'm concerned that, we're gonna have a Kalo decision coming down, So I'm worried about my old house. Would you be amenable to amend this on the floor at town meeting to something like 3 months or 4 months, or why are you stuck with 1 year?
The original bylaw that was passed by town meeting in 1995 was 6 months. And was it 2001, or was it, it was 2004? A few years, sometime later, it was expanded to 1 year. The reason for that was that 6 months was not a very high hurdle, if you will. And the reason, if you will, if you think about what's really going on here, the people who, for the most part, from our experience, the people who are demolishing homes are the people who are developers, are coming from outside town, who see a small house that they can knock down and put up a much larger house that they can sell for much more.
What's wrong with that?
If you don't mind the complete change of character of Winchester, I think one of the things what makes Winchester at what it is its historical character. Its mix of older homes and range of architectural styles. Again, this is a choice the town meeting has to make.
Yeah. So what's the answer to the question? Are you amenable to a reduction?
No,
to some-
because we feel that 1 year is about the right time where people say, if you think, oh, I can wait out 3 months or I can wait out 6 months, but 9 months is kind of a speed bump, if you will, for a developer who wants to come in here and make a quick buck, who says, I just like what happened at 21 Warren.
You can come, well, we probably shouldn't debate this here.
Yeah.
I get the answer.
I asked and answered. Yeah, good, excellent question. And
Yes, it's a fair question.
other inquiries? If you would, yeah, if you would use the microphone and identify yourself, that would be helpful. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Roger Wilson, Precinct 1. Have you distributed these properties by precinct?
No, they're pretty well spread out around the town. As a matter of fact, when we were putting together our presentation for the town meeting, we are including a number of sample photographs of properties, and in fact, this big fat booklet, we spell out a number of properties. They're pretty well scattered around town. I mean, the historic properties are.
I think it would be helpful for people who represent a specific precinct to have an idea of the impact on their precinct.
It's, I'll tell you what page it's on.
You say there's an inventory?
Page 14. Well, it's not so much an inventory. The inventory we use, if you will, comes from the assessor's office, which its records include the year that approximate year that houses were built.
This looks like anecdotal information. What I'm saying is it would be helpful to have.
I've got a spreadsheet with them if you'd like it.
A
Yes.
specific by precinct.
That's alphabetical by street. So I suppose we could, produce it by precinct.
If you want it to pass.
Come right ahead. Good evening.
Good evening. George Now, Precinct 2. As I see it, there's two questions here of fairness that have to be addressed. One is the decision, once you decide, that it meets the age criteria, you have to decide, it's rather subjective decision, this house does, this house doesn't. And the other one I see it is the percent of houses, which has always troubled me. I think Concord and Lexington might have something. I mean, why not make it 100% of the houses? Then no one can say, hey, how come him, not me? Oh, me.
That's a good point.
Thank you.
Thank you. Other questions, inquiries, comments? Otherwise, we'll thank Jack for his,
one-
I'm sorry, come right, yes.
I just wanted to ask, would this cost the taxpayer any money?
No,
Because that's what you were gonna ask.
no.
Okay, thank you.
I talked to Patty about that. We're good.
We're staying out of that.
Am I excused?
You are, Jack, thank you very much. Moving on, the next article is a voluminous one. I don't know how much commentary it will engender, but I'll tell you what, I've had a request to take the superintendent early. He has another meeting that he has to go to, and Bill, you're getting on 6:30 here, so I'm going to take out of order Article 17, which is the school committee's proposal in your booklet on page 12. To see if the town will vote to create and appropriate money to a stabilization fund in accordance with Section 5B of Chapter 40 of the Massachusetts General Laws for the purpose of special education, and to determine whether the money shall be provided by the tax levy, by transfer from available funds, or by any combination of these methods, or take any other action in relation thereto. That's the summary of the article, and superintendent has the information on the motion and the gist of and the purpose of the article.
Thank you, Richard. Good evening, everyone. This article is a result of I want to say a number of years, but certainly 2 or 3 years of discussions that the school committee, school administration has been having with the finance committee every year that we meet and review and talk about our budget requests. The issue of special education funding always comes up. I'm not going to bother going through the background. It's really pretty clear in your booklet if everybody has a copy of that, which establishes the rationale. But for some additional background information, in 4 of the last 5 years, budget years, the school department has been faced with unanticipated and unbudgeted special education costs, specifically focused on special education tuitions. Those are expenses that the school department is required to pay for students who are placed in schools outside of Winchester to meet their needs. It also impacts transportation costs because we're also mandated and required to provide transportation for those placements. The way the budgeting process works and the way we project what our next year's special education costs are is that during the late winter, as our budget is being put together and presented to the various boards, we use what we identify as known costs for the following year. And we always include a small inflation factor because tuition rates go up and transportation costs go up. So we monitor that and include those costs. We also, as we go through the year, whether it's during budget time, after budget time, during the summer, or right at the beginning of the school year, we're constantly monitoring the special education budget. And in particular, we monitor on a regular basis. Somebody's looking at it every day, frankly. And we're monitoring the changes in the required services. So many times over the summer, we could have students who move into the district, and we wouldn't know that at budget time, that are coming from another district with a plan, a special education plan that requires an expenditure of money, most typically for out-of-district placement, which would include tuition. So in 4 of the last 5 years, what the school committee has done to meet those additional costs is that early on in the school year, we've actually placed a freeze on our budget, and we've made those required payments from other line items in the budget. Most specifically, we focus on supplies and materials, things like textbooks, and we freeze. And so what happens is the budget plan that gets put in front of town meeting, ultimately voted by town meeting, that we say, here's what we're going to do with the money that you're appropriating and approving, we have to change that in order to pay for mandated costs. We have not gone back to town meeting. We have not gone back to, in the last 5 years, to the Finance Committee to ask for reserve fund transfers to pay for those funds. So what this stabilization fund will allow is a mechanism for the school department to come back to town meeting. Theoretically, we'll have 2 bites of the apple, fall town meeting or spring town meeting, and to deal with unanticipated or unbudgeted costs, if there are any. And there are some years where that's not the case. Our proposal is to establish this under the statute, General Law, Chapter 40, Section 5B, which gives the authority to create stabilization funds to town meeting. And then any appropriations from that stabilization fund can only be approved by town meeting and requires a 2/3 vote. So as I had indicated earlier, we've been discussing this for 2 or 3 years. We have researched local communities, other towns, to see how they deal with this issue. And this isn't an issue unique to Winchester. And our initial review found that 2 local communities, Lexington and Burlington, have handled this issue differently. In Lexington, in 2008, they established a stabilization fund under the statute. And the town of Burlington in 2006 actually adjusted their budgeting practice so that the line item for special education tuitions and special education transportation were actually transferred from the school budget to the municipal budget. So that when they had similar issues, town meeting would have to decide what to do with those over expenditures. And so on the school side, they weren't going into general education, if you will, line items to pay for the mandated and required special education cost. We felt that just wasn't practical. That didn't make sense. Lexington has had success with the stabilization fund methodology. And what it does, we believe, is it provides true transparency to that part of the budget process. And town meeting has the ultimate authority to appropriate funds that would be needed under those circumstances. What's interesting is that over the last couple of months, we've learned that Wellesley has just recently done this, and Belmont, the Belmont School Committee is proposing, we've actually provided them the language that we're using, and they'll be bringing it to their town meeting later this year as well.
Thank you, Superintendent. Is there anyone here that has a question or comment on it?
Yeah, rather than just a quick one. Superintendent, what is the cost of special education and how has it risen over the past 5 years, number one? And 2, you talk about tuition, that implies that we're sending children somewhere else and they're going to a special facility. Like what special facility and what is the tuition?
So John, thanks. That's a good question. So our special education budget represents about 25% of the total school budget. The tuition piece, we're projecting next year that total tuition costs will be about $3,300,000, $3.3 million. That is related to approximately 51 students. And the range in cost range from $303,000 a year for a student who has severe needs, is placed in a residential program, so they live in that program 365 days. And in addition to that cost, we provide the educational service cost as well. And that's in that one particular case, those are 2 separate bills. From a low of our placements in the SEAM Collaborative, Special Education Mutual, so SEAM is the acronym for that. Winchester is one of 10 local communities that are members of that particular collaborative, and they run specialized programs. The tuitions for those programs range from $34,000 a year to about $68,000 a year. Those are day programs, so we transport students from Winchester to that program and then back home. Our costs have probably risen over the last 5 years. I would say they're averaging 6 to 7 to 8% a year. I'd have to go back and look at those numbers. I don't have that in front of me. But what's difficult about this challenge is the truly unanticipated nature of the special education budget, because we could literally have a student move in to town in July from Illinois and come and require a special education placement to a specialized school that could run $80,000 to $90,000 to $100,000. And so what we're proposing is, we're proposing to establish the fund. There are two motions, and then the second motion would be to initially fund the stabilization. I'm going to recommend it's not determined at this time, but I'm recommending to the school committee at their April 24th meeting that they propose to fund this initially with a $2,000 appropriation that will come from the school committee's current year operating budget. We anticipate that that money is available. It is available, and that's available this year because the state legislature increased their special education reimbursement program to districts. After our budget was approved at town meeting, they increased the funding from what had been the last 3 years 40% of a particular basis, allowable costs, that's part of that statute, up to 60%. So we have had for this year unanticipated expenditures of $162,000. The increase in funding that we received through the state reimbursement increase will leave approximately, I want to say $260,000 available. So we're proposing to initially fund the stabilization account with $200,000. And our hope is that incrementally over time to build that to a specific level. Not sure. We're looking at data now. I would say somewhere in the $300,000 to $400,000 range. The average increase the last 3 years on unanticipated cost is $203,000. So 3 years ago was about, I think it was $239,000. Last year it was $215,000. This year, $162,000. The 3 years add up to $609,000, and that's the methodology that I'm using in terms of making a recommendation for initial funding, to take the average of the last 3 years.
Yes, in the back.
Bill, if this comes from the tax levy, is it gonna be a percentage? Is it gonna be a dollar amount? And who determines that amount?
So if I understand the question, you're talking about the initial funding?
Yes, well, even ongoing, every year.
So ongoing, I mean, I think if the fund gets established and if town meeting does appropriate the initial funding, which will come from the school committee's FY12 appropriation, future funding, I'm sure, will be a topic of conversation with the finance committee. Our goal will be to, in the future, if we expect a surplus in the school budget, to perhaps do the same thing we're doing this year, or, perhaps there'll be discussion about funding the stabilization fund like other stabilization funds in the town are funded. But, I I wish I could tell you that we do this, we do it once, we fund it initially, the money is available now at that amount to do so, and then we won't have to worry about this again, because we won't have these surprises. But, you know, that's unlikely. So maybe we'll get through it a year, because I've seen that these years go in trends. You know, 3 years ago, we ended up with a surplus in the special education line. Sometimes, instead of numbers of students moving in, sometimes students move out of Winchester. But, you know, that's really kind of a hit and miss.
Other questions? On the right and then to the back, yes.
Bill?
Hi, Roger.
One of the great things that you've done since you got here is actually revert funds from the school budget to the town, which hadn't happened previously. So would this impact that practice, or you know, how would you differentiate between operating funds that were not expended and special ed funds that were not expended? Because this is a mechanism where the school committee would fund this essentially rolling reserve, correct?
So the proposal is for the school committee to fund it for this year. I cannot guarantee, and it would, I can't indicate that would be the same scenario every year. We just don't know. However, it certainly would be my commitment, if there are funds available, to continue to support funding the stabilization fund until it's at a level where there's consensus that's the level that makes sense. So I you know, that part beyond this year, we're a little bit unsure of you know, whether that'll be a regular practice or not. A lot of it, I think, will depend on how next year goes.
In the back, yes. And Betsy, you know, if you would, everybody else has kind of identified themselves at least once, so if you would do us that favor.
Sure. Betsy Greger, and here's a private citizen question for you. I think one of the things that will be important on this is to point out that this would be under the more general statute that was adopted after the town adopted its special purpose stabilization funds, which was done under a home rule petition, and therefore the requirements are somewhat different. And I think that is important for the town meeting and the citizens to understand. And that's particularly true, you know, if at some point this would get funded, you know, by a portion directly from the tax levy, for example.
Yeah, Chair would note that this is a specific stabilization proposal. It's not a general stabilization proposal. That's the contrast. The funds would be dedicated to this purpose and this purpose only, and could be appropriated only for the purpose, as Bill has mentioned earlier, by a 2/3 vote of future town meetings. But
It may be of interest to note that that Representative Lewis earlier in the year filed legislation which essentially allows school committees to bring this concept to town meetings under what would be a new law. I'm personally still reviewing, trying to understand what the difference might be. But Chapter 40, Section 5B does allow town meeting to establish stabilization funds for a specific reason. And so that is the direction that we're going at this point in time.
saw the hand of the chairperson of the Finance Committee, so, and for our edification, or the public's, identify yourself.
My name is Patty Cluley, and we've definitely talked about this for quite some time, and generally speaking, the Finance Committee has been in support of it, but one part I wasn't sure I heard properly was, so my understanding was that if you have a favorable variance in the special education tuitions, then your plan is to put that back into the fund. Is that what you were just saying?
Well, I think that generally that would make sense,
Yeah.
but I can't speak for the school committee, and what they might do in future years. The school committee, as you know, has the ability to transfer funds. They may find that, there's X amount of money in 1 year in that line, but another need in the district has come up through the year, and they may decide to expend those funds for that need. So I just want to be very clear about that. That always is a possibility. Sometimes, believe it or not, the superintendent may even recommend to the school committee, some kind of other funding.
Thank you.
Other questions, observations, or comments? Otherwise, thank you, Superintendent, for
Thank you
the
very much. Thanks for
very
taking
good
the
explanation. Thank you. Article 4 is the next item in the list of articles. It is the most voluminous, and it is entitled the Public Shade Tree Proposal. It is a proposal to adopt a new bylaw. We apologize to any trees that were sacrificed in compilation of all these. None of them were shade trees, I don't believe, but note for the record that there's a lot of paper up here. So, and we do have some proponents who want to speak on behalf of the article. I'll summarize it. As I said, it compiles at least 6 pages. But the intent and purpose generally is enacted for the purpose of preserving and protecting public shade trees pursuant to Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 87, and to protect trees on municipal property. To achieve these purposes, this proposed bylaw, relies on the Winchester Board of Selectmen as street commissioners and as the public entity who oversees the powers of the tree warden in accordance with Mass General Laws 87, Section 2. And we have Betsy here speaking on behalf, and Betsy and you
I
alone?
wouldn't want you to be alone.
Right ahead. So again, it's Article 4 in the compilation.
Yes, and I'm here speaking as chairman of the Permanent Street Tree Committee at this point. We're bringing forward this article. Chapter 87 is out there already at the state level. However, there are many sections of it that are rather ambiguous, but it provides the enabling legislation for Winchester to adopt its own specific bylaw. And it enables the town to set up enforcement mechanisms, hearing procedures, and all of those things that are more specific to us. We've ensured that the definitions are in line with the definitions in the zoning bylaws, so we're not dealing with any dueling definitional issues and so forth. So with that, last December, the Board of Selectmen had opted to go forward with a proposal to become part of the Tree City USA program. As part of that program, we are required either to adhere by Chapter 87, which, as an indicator of how little known really that was, we weren't actually strictly adhering to it until quite recently. However, we view this as being the opportunity not only to give the Winchester flavor to the requirements that are out there under Chapter 87, but also it's an opportunity to inform people of what their responsibilities might be with respect to pruning, with respect to branches that fall over on their property, even though it might be a street tree, or, and what they need to do if, for example, they have a request to remove a street tree, which might happen in the course of demolition or something like that. So those are some instances that we can call out.
Questions on the proposed article, contents of the proposed bylaw?
Why do we
John?
need this? I mean, what have the shade
Well-
trees been doing for the last 200 years?
Well, they've been growing, but what we have been concerned about is, for example, if there have been trees that have been deemed to be hazard trees, there is not a procedure, for example, whereby DPW they might have to go onto private property in order to deal with, a tree leaning over the edge or something, even though it would be a public street tree. This actually provides that authority. and the procedures for doing that. For example, you should also, it is also worthy of note that the extent of our current public shade tree law is one sentence. That sentence being that you are not allowed to tie up a horse to a public shade tree. So, it's just a trifle out of date.
As the Board of Selectmen noted the other night, it's working very well. We haven't seen any horses tied to any trees recently.
Yes.
It's working. Other questions on the proposed bylaw or the article? Yes, Roger.
So does this apply strictly to trees which are on public property?
Yes, that's correct. But as you know, with trees, there's always liable to be some branches that might end up going over
And
onto private property.
if I could follow up on, does it regulate in any way the utility practice of cutting trees that are on private property, cutting half of the tree off?
Well, it does require utilities to provide if they are planning on doing trimming during the course of the year, which they may have to do.
To public trees,
To public trees.
not to private.
Not to private trees, but to public trees, to, actually, they will be required to file a plan with the tree warden
But not to
in
private, it doesn't affect
advance.
private.
Exactly, it just does not apply to trees on private property per se.
Other questions or comments? Yes, go right ahead.
Or just the what if. If there's a public tree and it's growing into my roof, what would, or, a tree going on to private property, what's the impact of that on a
Well,
private citizen?
Okay, for example, if it's deemed to be a hazard tree and there's pruning that needs to be done, basically the town doesn't have the right to necessarily go on to private property in order to accomplish that. This lays out is the possibility of, for example, the town would notify the homeowner if they had not responded within an appropriate length of time. At that point, the tree warden could have, would hold a hearing, and they could actually go and get a warrant to go on private property and deal that, and then charge the costs back to the homeowner.
I was thinking more in the reverse. A homeowner sees tree going into house, cuts branches
Yep.
off,
If you could look at,
have they
At-
committed some egregious act?
in the bylaw proposal on page 7 of the warrant, in Article Book 18.7, subparagraph in parentheses B, procedures, any person seeking to prune or remove a public shade tree or town tree shall submit a written application to the tree warden.
I guess my question is, how will somebody know that this in fact is a public tree? And I guess some people might be obvious, but, for the people who are just looking to tie up their horse,
You know?
figure this out.
Do it at your own risk, I think.
Yeah. I mean, for the most part, it is fairly obvious because there are those trees that are really on the verge of the public way. So,
Other questions or comments on the proposed article? Otherwise, Betsy, thank you very much.
Yeah?
Pat, you actually, you want to lump them all together?
I'd love to, yes.
All right, so for everyone's reference, we're moving on to Article 5, but as I have it outlined in my book schedule here, you should also reference Articles 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 26, 27, and 33 are all general topics and some very specific topics being recommended or being put forward by the Finance Committee. And we have the chairperson here to speak on most of those matters, or all.
I will try to be quick. The first article, Article 5, is a motion to make minor changes to Chapter 2 of the bylaws. That it's just a simple motion to allow electronic distribution of budget materials to town meeting. And for those members, board members, town meeting members, department heads who would prefer to still get it in paper, they may. So this just should ease some of the administrative burden, is a more efficient way of distributing some of our materials, like our budget book is 100 pages thick. Many people don't want to read it. So this will allow you to use it as a reference document, maybe print the summary level, summary document and access it at your leisure. There are no changes to the dates, no changes to the charter, it's just in the bylaws.
We want to do these one at a time, or do we want to let the chair go down the whole list of articles? Anybody have a preference? We'll try to entertain a preference. Article 5, questions, comments? No? Go
Do 'em all, okay.
Okay, so we'll try that.
Okie dokie.
John? Yeah? She just did.
I just did.
Six is not a non-financial, I don't believe. No, we're not at Article 6 yet. We're skipping over that for the time being. We're taking out of order the other finance proposals.
This
So
is
we'll
our
come back
main,
to
oh, sorry.
Yeah.
So Article 9 is our main budget motion. It will be supported by the budget book and the yellow sheets. This is how we approve the budget. Article 10 is a standing article to appropriate funds for vocational technical education. Article 11, okay, this is a,
Area stabilization fund.
right, appropriations to the stabilization funds. Motion 1 is in order to maintain a consistent rate of spending on capital maintenance projects over time. Motion 2 is to encourage life cycle costing. Article 12 is a standing water and sewer appropriation article. Article 13 appropriates to the Recreation Department Enterprise Fund. And then it gets a little more interesting. Article 26, this has 3 motions, all related to other post-employment benefits. The first motion establishes a fund that is in accordance with a newly developed law from this July. The second motion appropriates to this fund $500,000. The third motion transfers from the old retiree fund to this fund. And then Article 27 would be, should town meeting not want to establish the new fund, this would give us a mechanism for appropriating retiree health care benefits to the old fund. But if Article 26 passes, Article 27 will be postponed, and then Article 33 has been postponed.
Questions on the summary of those financial articles? Roger? Yeah.
Patty, when you distribute these materials electronically, would this be in a PDF format, or would this be actual files that we could manipulate?
I think they'll be in a PDF format so that they are frozen in time, but I like files that people can manipulate, and PDF files drive me crazy. So if you want to help me figure out how to do the other, that would be great. But I think when we're putting out a town meeting document, it needs to be frozen at a moment in time.
Other questions, comments, observations?
Thank you.
That's good. Thank you. Bill, do you need to come back? No? Are you just here for, you're here for the entertainment? Did you need to come back? Oh, okay. Right. Article 6. I believe I saw proponents here that also appeared before the Board of Selectmen's meeting on Monday. So Susan and Norm. How are you? Good. Article 6, page 10 of the document. We won't read the entire resolution. We'll let Susan and Norm speak to that, but the general gist is to seek approval at town meeting for a resolution that calls upon Congress to send to the states for ratification a constitutional amendment that would overturn the Supreme Court's decision in the case of Citizens United versus the Federal Elections Commission, and to restore democracy to the people. That's a good thing. And if you want, you can go ahead and explain the import of
Okay.
of Citizens United and the purpose of the resolution.
Okay, happy to do that. The Citizens United decision said generally that corporations have a First Amendment free speech right to spend from their general treasury unlimited funds in campaigns. This has led to the use of so-called super PACs, or independent expenditure-only committees. And we're seeing that an enormous amount of money is going into campaigns, especially recently in the presidential campaign that's going on, or the Republican primary campaign that's going on. And also, this is just a kind of a seismic shift in the way the corporations are treated under the Constitution. It has far-reaching implications for elections at all levels, municipal and state, as well as on the national level. It overturned elements of the McCain-Feingold Act of 2002, which was a carefully crafted legislative solution to regulating campaign finance. And it's allowed corporations to spend unlimited amounts of money to influence elections at all levels, as I said. By ruling that corporations have the same free speech rights as natural persons, this runs counter to a long line of Supreme Court decisions and is inconsistent with state campaign finance laws as well. So the warrant article just is asking for the town to pass a resolution, which is, again, just speech, not to spend any money or undertake any other obligations, and to join a growing list of towns and cities across the state in voicing support for this constitutional amendment.
So to urge Congress to take action.
Right.
Questions? John?
Yes. Well, regardless of which side of McCain-Feingold I'm on, or which side of the Supreme Court decision I'm on, you know, this is the kind of stuff that Berkeley and Cambridge does. You know, I lived in Cambridge for a long time, and towns like Cambridge, and apparently maybe towns like Winchester, if you got your way, would be debating, you know, every act that Congress does, whether you personally like it or dislike it, or you want to overturn a Supreme Court decision. I myself, as a town meeting member, don't want to deal with that. I don't want to support your personal opinion, you know, before the U.S. Congress, whether or not you agree with me or not. I don't think that's what towns in Winchester ought to be doing, you know. So I think it's just totally out of order, you know. So I would, okay.
Well, I understand your point.
So, I mean, you're asking the town to endorse what you suggesting. I don't think that's what a town meeting ought to be doing. We ought to be doing the town budget, town affairs. This is, you know, this is the state legislature and the U.S. Congress. And the Supreme Court, like it or not, has come down on this 5-4. That's the end of it.
Well, just to clarify, yes, it is the Supreme Court, but this decision applies to elections. And our town is run by elected bodies, and even town meeting members are elected. So I think it is within the scope of town meeting.
Oh, Chair, well,
No, I
the
know.
moderator will determine whether or not it's in the scope when the time comes, but it sounds like it's a very good topic to debate at town meeting, the very purpose of town meeting, it sounds like. But
And I can understand not wanting to get, you know, town meeting bogged down in long debates of arcane things, and I'm sure we can accomplish, you know, we can debate this the same way we debate other things, and there'll be a vote, and it will pass or it won't, and you know, that's just part of democracy. It's fine.
And the chair will note it, it's, the process here is 10, is it taxpayers or residents that are required to sign to get it before? I think it's.
I think it's yes, voters, I think.
Voters. Okay.
May I ask, are you a member of a particular political interest group that's advancing this, or are you doing this? Huh?
Doesn't matter.
Well, I'm asking, right?
Doesn't matter.
I'm a citizen, it doesn't matter, yeah.
But are you a member of the committee to overthrow the U.S. Supreme Court?
Doesn't matter.
No, I'm not. I'm not a member of the committee to overthrow the Supreme Court.
She's a registered
I'm not-
voter
I understand.
and resident.
All right,
of
Yep.
I don't want to get off,
Let's,
don't want to get off in too many tangents, folks, but, you know, yes.
Did you entertain the possibility of doing this instead of, I think an issue here is you're asking 192 members of the town, which is less than, what, 0.01% of the voters, to basically speak for the town. Instead, did you entertain possibly putting this on the ballot as a non-binding referendum, which probably would have been more of a sample of the sentiment of the town as a whole?
I don't know if that's possible. Is there a mechanism for doing that?
Yeah, it's a higher threshold than 10 registered voters, but
Signatures.
I don't think it's significantly higher.
For a town election?
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't know that was available.
Check that process with the town clerk.
Mhm.
There's definitely a timeline to it and a signature requirement.
Mhm.
Other questions or comments on the, yes?
Hi, Bill Santoro, 67 Front Street. I just want to point out that the Citizens United has not only had a detrimental effect on the electoral process, but it also has the potential to taint the legislative processes at all levels of government. And I think that's, we need to be concerned about the integrity of that process. And
So noted? Yeah, yes.
My name is Pete Baldwin. I was attending on Monday night at the Board of Selectmen. And I think the process on Monday was contaminated by this question of partisanship, which was raised a few moments ago. And it could be viewed as partisan in the short term, but not in the long term. In the long term, it is not partisan. It is about the people. And I think that it was very disappointing that the meeting on Monday was really contaminated by such a thought.
Chair would note, I was at the meeting. I didn't,
This guy, I don't even know who he is, Howley, whatever it is, he said it's partisan, I don't want to deal with it, and then the other guy said, well, I think it might be too, but that's basically where the discussion ended.
yeah, I may have missed that part of the portion of the meeting, but.
These guys
you know.
didn't say diddly.
Right.
I mean, it was ridiculous. I mean, it
Well, it's-
basically dismissed it.
Well, in a way,
I don't think it's been dismissed. It's still under consideration by the board. And it's one of those deliberative questions that is, as I just said earlier, from my perspective, I'm only the chair here, but it's certainly a topic that is ripe for whether or not town meeting thinks it should be taken under
It's a
consideration.
people's issue.
Absolutely,
It's our country.
absolutely. That's why the process is there for 10 people to put it before the town meeting. Yes.
The gentleman before mentioned Cambridge, which has perhaps connotations politically for many people. And I'd just like to mention that if you're not aware, there is a fairly widespread effort, which isn't one big committee to overthrow. It is many different types of entities speaking out on this. Within the past week, for example, the attorneys general of 11 states wrote to the leadership of the U.S. Senate and House calling on Congress to move a constitutional amendment to overturn the Citizens United decision. And while I don't know what parties these attorneys general are affiliated with, I would imagine that Massachusetts, Delaware, Hawaii, Kentucky, Mississippi, Montana, New Mexico, New York, Rhode Island, Vermont, and West Virginia probably are not all on the same side of the aisle politically or trying to do something conspiratorial. The question of having a representative body take action in California, the lower chamber, the California Assembly, voted by something like a 2/3 majority to call on Congress to pass, to create and send out for ratification by the state such an amendment. It's waiting for the Senate to take action. I don't believe it has yet. 2 other states already have done so, and a third, where they don't do it that way, has basically signed on through another process to do it. And I believe that is New Mexico, Maryland, and Hawaii. Many cities and towns are doing this. There is a bill on Beacon Hill, Senate 772. I believe that our own representative, Jason Lewis, is a co-sponsor of this, or whether it's a House bill that is to accomplish this. There is pretty widespread analysis of the impact of this Supreme Court decision, and no one is trying to do away with the Supreme Court, as far as I know. It is not against businesses. In fact, there is a survey that says that something on the order of 66% of more than 1,000 small businesses surveyed were against this, and only 9% of small business owners favored it. So whatever side of the aisle we're on, whether we're business people or not, the issue is really the power that large corporations are given by this decision to pour huge amounts of money without necessarily even identifying who's doing the contributing into the advertising campaigns, many of which are negative in nature and perhaps are not doing either party or any party that much good in terms of an electoral process. So we think that, by the way, Susan and I have been sort of identified up here with this, but we were 2 of 125 or so people who requested of the Board of Selectmen that this be put on the warrant. And I believe quite a few folks who signed that request are here this evening. So there's a lot of interest in it, and I think it would be totally appropriate for us to take up at the town meeting, which is the form of government that we have here. If we had an open town meeting, it'd be a little different, but we have a representative town meeting, and I think we go to our representatives with it. Thank you.
Yes.
Yes, Vern, could you?
If you could, if you hadn't spoken yet this evening, if you could give us your
Barbara
name.
Magnuson,
Thank you, Barbara.
22 Ardley Road.
Thank you, Bob.
I know you mentioned Monday night that there were 7 Massachusetts towns that have already passed this.
Mm-hmm.
I wondered if you had them. They can't all be Cambridge. And I think this is the constitutional way we have of redressing a Supreme Court decision that is corrosive and affects, unbalances our civil rights as citizens with the use of vast amounts of corporate money. And so if you have that, I'd like to hear what other towns proudly support this, and I would be proud if Winchester joined their ranks.
Ones that I know of that have already taken action include Needham, Natick, Nahant, some towns on Martha's Vineyard, and earlier, back in as much as a year ago, there were 9 towns on Cape Cod, Great Barrington. It's under consideration in the city of Worcester, and the Boston City Council in February unanimously passed a resolution calling for such an amendment. So it's large and small and not necessarily of a particular ilk, I believe.
So you have all the background information on Article 6. Any other questions or comments? Thank you, Susan. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yep. Moving on, we have the next item. In sequence is Article 7. Proposal to amend the zoning bylaw. I believe it's also under consideration by the planning board this week as well. It's presented before the Board of Selectmen on Monday. I don't know if the proponent is here or anyone speaking on behalf of the article. Anybody want to comment on it?
I'm curious as just to where's this article coming from? What's its background?
Well, I don't want to add any editorial commentary other than, the summaries that appear. It is a specific request to amend the zoning bylaw to include a specific reference in at least one section of the bylaw to what is known in the general laws as Section 3 of Chapter 40A. And again, I wouldn't feel comfortable venturing out to try to tell you what I think is the intended consequence or goal or objective here, but it's a fairly standard zoning language that is in the Massachusetts general laws, and I think the proposal here is to have it be cited specifically in our zoning bylaw locally.
But what is it about? I thought the whole purpose of the hearing is to get understanding. If the
Yeah.
town's not here, does that mean this is not in good stand for a town meeting?
That's up to town meeting, I suppose, whether or not, there's any consequence for not.
I read it, I don't understand.
I think the planning board public hearing's tomorrow night.
Yeah.
But
Hey,
I've got no idea about it.
It's commonly known as the Dover Amendment, and it deals with Dover, D-O-V-E-R, Town of Dover.
Yeah.
Amendment, and it deals most directly with the ability of cities and towns to, by restrictions on use, limit certain kinds of building activity for nonprofit, educational purposes. So
does that mean does that mean, let's say, a religious institution couldn't use any of this building? Or?
It's the opposite. It means the town, in most cases, what it means is the town or city, the community, within Massachusetts again, would not have the ability by zoning to refuse occupation of a building for religious or educational purposes. So it's the opposite. It protects the religious use, it protects the educational use and the nonprofit use.
So in case of, if you're a town and you're trying to protect your tax base by not having every piece of available land get picked up by a non-taxable organization.
Right.
Okay.
There's a good example right there. You cannot refuse the occupation of land or buildings for those purposes, merely for that reason. Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. Okay, again, in sequence, we handled Articles, I'm sorry, we're up to 8. And this is a general article for finance that authorizes temporary borrowing in lieu of anticipated revenues coming in, but it's a standard financial feature that appears every year. Rarely used, but it is a mechanism from time to time that cities and towns have to rely upon. That'll be proposed at town meeting. That's Article 8. Any questions on that one? Okay. We have heard from Finance on 9, 10, 11, 12, and 13. 14. It is a proposal by the Capital Planning Committee. I don't know if we have anybody here from the Capital Planning Committee. They went out? But I'm sure that'll be taken up by both the Capital Chair and Finance Chair and this office at town meeting. But it should be self-explanatory, authorize appropriate sums of money to take care of various infrastructure locations, Russell Brook Culvert, Woodside Road Culvert, Cambridge Street, and High Street. Article 15, again, a capital planning article. Standard application of funds of Cemetery Permanent Care Fund. Anybody here in particular have inquiries or interest in that article? Article 16, Board of Selectmen have proposed to see if the town will raise and appropriate any sums of money to be used with such sum or sums as may be made available from the State Highway Fund or allotted by the county commissioners for maintenance, repair, alteration, relocation, or other improvements of town or county ways, together with acquisition of easements. This is a standard DPW type activity for Chapter 90 funds and improvements to streets and sidewalks. Anybody have a particular interest in that article? Okay. 17, you heard from the superintendent on the proposal to create the stabilization fund for special education purposes. Article 18, this is a proposal to allocate $5,000 from available funds for archival purposes in accordance with Mass General Laws 4453E. Any questions or any interest in that particular article? I'd be glad to elaborate. But Article 19, see if the town will continue a revolving fund in accordance with Mass General Laws, Chapter 4453E, in order to receive fees associated with the use of energy in school facilities. So there's a special energy fund established with some surcharges on rental areas, and that money is put back into energy conservation efforts. Questions? Yes.
What's the current limit on that fund?
80,000.
That's it currently?
Yes, I believe. Article 20, Board of Health, see if the town will continue a revolving fund in accordance with Mass General Laws 4453E in order to receive monies, grants, or gifts and fees charged for public health programs, such as clinics sponsored by the Board of Health, to authorize the board to administer and expend funds for these and related programs, such as medical services, up to a limit of $60,000 in fiscal year 2013. Again, common fund that the Board of Health collects fees and administers accordingly. Any questions or interest in that one? Article 21 and Article 22 are both articles being recommended by the Field Management Committee. You see their spokesman here to talk about the two proposals and the initiatives they're under. Chris, how are you?
Good, I'm doing, thank you.
Good.
Thank you, everyone, for your time. I come before you as a member of the Field Management Committee, and for the past year, we've been looking at establishing, excuse me, establishing for Article 21, a revolving account for new fees that we will be putting towards permitting of usage to youth groups and field users that would like to use the fields and block out a certain amount of time. In Article 21, the account is a revolving account covered by Mass General Law, Chapter 44, Section 53E and a half. These funds would be put into this account, and when situations arise on the fields to maintain them, whether it be the field itself or playground equipment or tennis courts at Leonard and McDonald Field and parking lots, fencing, signage, trash, we would have this account to establish the quality of the fields to bring them up to date. They're heavily used, and we feel that this account would help establish a fund for us to maintain the fields. Article 22 is specifically designed for the synthetic turf. We are 3 years into the new turf. We have no revenue. The life expectancy of the carpet on the turf is 10 years, so that gives us 7 years before we start thinking of replacing it. Article 22 will allow us to create an account that we can use for permitting fees for the synthetic turf for users, and that account will allow us to create a savings so when the carpet has run its use, we have something to go to capital and tell them we have a certain amount that we can put towards a new carpet. It will also allow us to maintain the carpet turf, the synthetic turf, the bleachers, which are new, the press box, and as well as give us the opportunity to possibly hire a part-time caretaker that can meet the users, maintain the fields while the users are there, playing their games on the turf, and clean up and making sure all the rules are abided by. We've looked at other towns in the Middlesex area, and this is the way that a lot of the towns are heading. Winchester is a little bit behind. Right now, there are no fees that are established to user groups in here in Winchester, and we felt that this was the best way for Winchester to grow and to maintain a quality field for its residents.
Questions on the article proposal? Yeah, we'll start on the right with Roger. Yeah.
So, the question is, the expenditures from this revolving fund would be in the control of this field committee?
No, actually, the control of the expenditures would go to the town manager's office based on recommendations by the field management committee, which meets regularly with all the users. So when situations come up, last year at Mullen Field, we had an issue and we had to do an emergency repair, and we had to take that out of donations from the user groups as well as other budgets to maintain a safe field to play on. This fund would allow us to go to the town manager to access these funds for that type of situation.
And if, just by edification, you see the same citation in the several articles here, this chapter 44, section 53E, 1/2. It's the purpose of setting up that revolving fund to collect the fees specifically for this purpose otherwise, and they are allowed to accumulate up to a certain level for this purpose. Otherwise, they have to come into what's called the general fund and be appropriated through town meeting procedure annually on the budget, but this allows them to be isolated and used for the specific purpose of field maintenance.
And just follow up, what is the fee revenue currently?
Currently, we generate about $3,000 in field fees, which is attributed to Gin Light. The other fields in town, we do not receive any type of revenue. Right now, user groups are not charged a fee. The policy for fees, permitting fees in the town, only deals with outside groups, outside users, and adult groups. And it's based on a window of, for every 4 hours, it's $15. Over 4 hours, it's $25. So it's a very limited type of revenue that we come in.
Other questions? Yes.
I just make note that, at least in the wording of Article 21, it is to authorize the field management committee to administer and expend the town manager. But the question I have is, why do we have the two separate articles? I mean, it seems like trying to isolate the synthetic turf from everything else, which I can kind of understand the logic of that, but I'm wondering, one of the things that might someday go around that synthetic field or be in the same area is the track. And my guess is you really can't charge a user fee for the track. So it almost seems to me that you'd be better off just kind of putting the user fees all into one big pot and, you know, using it as the need arises. I mean, it's a little bit 6 of one, half dozen of the other, but invariably something's going to fall through the cracks if you try and isolate to just.
No, I understand that. It is a great point. We looked at other towns in the Middlesex area that we compete against at the high school level, and they all have different tiered of fees. And the synthetic turf, it's between grass and synthetic turf. Synthetic turf is kind of isolated in that aspect. The turf field, as it sits right now, is actually part of the school committee. It's a part of the school, whereas Manchester Track, which is closest to Mystic Valley, sits on town property. That field has been divided. So Brian Carroll, the athletic director of Winchester High, actually controls the scheduling of the turf field, and the director of the recreation, which is myself, control the scheduling of all the other fields. So we kind of figured we could split it and have a fee, an account set up for the turf, which in 10 years down the line, you're looking at replacing a carpet of about $400,000. So, yes.
One other question. Would it be possible, rather than doing the revolving funds, what if we just sort of put the fees in and have them go through the recreation department enterprise account?
We did look at that. That would throw a little snafu, so to speak, into the enterprise fund, because it's not directly a rec type of expense or activity or program. We were looking to use this to supplement capital projects as well as current maintenance, and we were looking at, with the rec department being an enterprise, a lot of my expenses have to be identified. My time dealing with field issues and field scheduling has not been compensated, so to speak. These fees would allow that opportunity to address, so some of that would come back into the rec enterprise fund. The turf, having a caretaker, a custodian there, I believe from the DOR regulations that we've been dealing with the comptroller and working with DOR, that the best way to go is with the Chapter 44, Section 53E and a half, which would allow salaries to be paid out of these fees.
Other questions, comments on the two articles? Madam Chair?
Can you explain for a second, would it work to just set up a separate fund, like a parking meter fund? You know, so it wouldn't be through the enterprise fund, but why could we not just accumulate funds to pay for the carpet in a separate fund?
Well, again, with our conversations with Brian, and the DOR actually recommended that we went with the Chapter 44, Section 53E and a half, because of the salary aspect. I'm not sure if, and I'm not real familiar with the parking meter fund, and if salaries can actually be paid out of that, whereas in the revolving fund that we're suggesting.
Any other fee, if not specifically designated to be collected within the revolving fund, reverts to the general fund. You could then, in theory, you could have this be an annual allocation under the budget. I think the point being made by the field committee is that you come up with unanticipated issues during the course of the year that you would like to be able to address directly without having to go back for town meeting for further appropriation. That's the purpose, is to be able to handle those occasions during the course of the field use to maintain, and then also allow the money to be collected in the fund year after year, which, as you know, could not happen. It would have to revert to the general fund again at the end of the year if it were held in an account that was not revolving. So it would, you know, evolve into free cash, as they say. Right. Other questions on the article? Okay, thank you, Chris. Thank you. Article 23, it's a Board of Selectmen article to authorize the acquisition of land that was previously set aside and identified under a parcel transfer, formerly known as Winning Farm, I believe. I guess the current owner is now known as Winning Home. And town selectmen will speak on this article at town meeting, but I'm glad to try to answer any questions pertaining to it. Yes?
Actually, I'm not sure, it's Barry Star, Precinct 6. I'm not sure you have it right, and that's why I wanted to come to kind of...
Go right ahead, Ben.
Get it right. Well, my question tonight was going to be, does this have any impact, positive or negatively, with Winning Farm? Or if it's a completely independent event of Winning Farm? Winning Home, the way I understand it, is that Winning Home was the original owner of the property. Winning Home sold the land back in 1990, whenever it was, to Winning, actually to the town of Winchester.
Right.
The town of Winchester then turned around and sold a portion of it to Winning Farm LLC. And if I think I have it right, but again, that's why I wanted to come tonight to understand, was that a portion of it was held back because of
Contamination.
issues.
Right.
And that I think this clears that up, but my question, and so Winning Home and Winning Farm are two complete separate entities, but my question tonight, which I guess won't get answered, is does this have any impact positively or negatively to the Winning Farm LLC project, number one? And then I guess number two is does the town receive certification on this cleanup yet? The last I heard, that hadn't happened.
Yeah, I'll try to answer question one. I'm assuming when you say positive, negative impact on the development rights, is that what you mean?
On the development rights, is it clear, is it something that's required to help either ease that project along, or does it hinder that project?
Yeah, as, you know, again, I'm somewhat new. I haven't delved down into the details of the transaction. As I understand it, and as I would hope that it will be explained, is it was a parcel of land that would otherwise have been transferred at the time of the original transfer, but contamination was identified, and the requirement was for the new owner to clean and certify that it has been clean, and I don't think the town would take title to it unless they receive the appropriate environmental certifications. Kind of gets to your second point there, but as I understand it, it was a parcel that was isolated at the very beginning of the transaction, would have been taken title to then for passive, non-buildable purposes, where the town is...
Is it non-buildable? Is any of this parcel gonna then get turned around and handed to Winning Farm?
Well, I can't say yes or no on that, but again, the way I understand the background to the transaction, it's to be held for passive purposes. But again, I think the legal counsel and/or the selectmen could probably better answer that. At town meeting.
With all due respect,
Yep.
that's what I thought the purpose of tonight was to understand what those issues are.
Yeah.
I've been sitting here for an hour and a half because I thought that's what we were gonna hear about tonight.
Yeah, I couldn't tell you whether or not there is a strict restriction on future development on the parcels. And I wouldn't want to assume one way or the other that there is, you know.
So if nobody's here talking about it, does that mean this article's not in good order when it goes in front of town meeting?
You can ask them,
I mean, I don't know.
make that point to the moderator when the time comes, but, you know. But I can certainly try to find the answer for you in between time. I'll be glad to.
That's what we're all interested in, is find out the answer.
Yeah, well, that specific answer as to whether or not it can be developed at a later date, once title is accepted by the town, if it is, I'll find that out. And whether or not there are any deed restrictions associated with the issue.
I think when this article comes up, there'll be people like myself who will want to know the status of the whole situation up there.
Environmental status or general status?
The status of, the town sold that property.
The development status, yeah.
Yes, and the developer was supposed to have met various contractual commitments. What's the status of those commitments? You know, so I think that it would be worth digging deep into.
Getting those answers in order.
Right, and by the way, we call it losing farm.
Which kind of farm?
We call it losing farm.
Oh, it's not a winning farm? It's no aspersions on the horses that were on that farm, I hope, huh?
They're tied to shade trees.
Right, exactly. Anything else on Article 23? Article 24. I do not see Mr. Bottaro here, although I had spoken to him earlier today, and I'll tell you what, we'll continue on. If he shows up, we'll revert back. 25, see that the town will vote to raise and appropriate a transfer from available funds a sum of sums to a healthcare trust fund to be established in accordance with Mass General Laws 32B, 3A. That is being indefinitely withdrawn. So we will not have proposed activity on that at town meeting. Anybody have a question on it or otherwise? We heard on 26, 27 from the Finance Chair, 28. It's a proposal under the budget to take appropriate sums and transfer into the General Stabilization Fund. Questions on it? Not seeing any, we'll go to 29 to see if the town will vote to hear and act on the report of the Personnel Board, take any action in connection with the recommendations as to wages, salaries for non-union personnel. Recently, I proposed as town manager, and the Personnel Board recommended a pay increase within fiscal year 2013, which will begin on July 1st and end July 1st, 2012, and June 30th, 2013, a pay increase for non-unionized personnel during that time period of 1% beginning on July 1st, 2012, and then 0.95% as of January 1st, 2013. And those costs will be itemized in the projected fiscal year 2013 budget, at roughly about $85,000 in cost overall. Questions? No? Article 30, to see if the town will vote to amend the Town of Winchester Code of Bylaws, Chapter 13, Wetlands, and you see the proposed fee schedule accordingly, made by the town clerk. Questions, comments, observations, objections to the article? None. Article 31, to see if the town will raise an appropriate transfer from available funds a sum of sums money to be supplemented to reduce appropriations previously voted for. Take any other action in relation thereto. Again, a fairly standard budget article that allows budget activity to take place in anticipation of fiscal year 2013 if needed. Ms. Cooley? No?
Should I go get somebody else from the planning board? Betsy's downstairs.
On the conservation stuff?
On the planning board article?
Which one is that?
Waterways.
Yeah, the one in
24.
Drew's.
24.
Yeah.
Did I skip it?
Yeah,
No,
we're good.
no,
No, you said you were gonna.
Oh, no, I think, it's not, it's Drew's proposal as a planning board member. He has not had it heard and approved. That's on their agenda also for
Oh, okay.
Thursday evening, so. All right.
Could I just circle
Yes.
back on the 29?
29,
That's the
Yep.
pay increase.
yes.
I didn't quite understand what you were saying, a 1%?
July 1st, 2012, so at the beginning of fiscal year 2013, 1% effective pay raise then. And then in January, middle of the fiscal year, January 1st, 2013, 0.95%, not quite a percent.
And what's the rationale there? What's the?
It's an overall increase to base wage at the end of the fiscal year of 1.95%. Splitting it in that fashion lowers the cost to the budget within fiscal year 2013 by 0.5%, obviously.
But then it ratchets it up in future years.
Oh, yeah, that's the case for any percentage raised and at any time. It always is something, again, depending upon where an employee is hired at in a pay scale, has an impact on outlying years, absolutely.
So essentially what we're talking about is a 2%
For this 1 year, yeah.
And is that applied across the board?
Yes, it's applied to the base proposals that are in the bylaw, for the position.
For
instead.
every individual, or is there any
It go-
management discretion on
Is
that?
a separate raise opportunity entirely that is subject to management discretion. But this is a increase to the scale. If you can imagine a scale on a sheet, it's an increase to the scale. It's not, so it's not based on merit.
The 2%, is there, have we had 2% inflation, or what's the rationale for it?
Rationale in general, at this point in my proposal, is it's at the tail end of a 3-year fiscal proposal for all unionized and non-unionized members. It's the last in a series of increased proposals that had been negotiated on the unionized side of the labor force, and it's the kind of lockstep approach to treating non-unionized personnel in the same manner. At least through these contractual periods that were in place as I get in here, so. Yes.
Were those percentages reflected in your budget document that the finance committee got, or?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, it was reflected in the form of a lump sum. At that time of the proposal back in February, we didn't know exactly what the proposal would be in terms of what the split would be, or, you know, how it would materialize over the whole course.
So in essence, it would have been, was it identified as like the wage reserve?
Yes, it was a
Okay.
lump sum wage reserve of $120,000, I think was the round amount, and after the shakeout of the split, it comes out to be 85.
So procedurally at town meeting, we will vote the budget article.
You'll vote the article, and it'll have the actual
And then-
scales in.
Well, but we'll vote the budget article, and then down the road, we'll vote the personnel.
No, because
No,
we
okay.
won't, this is not on the budget article, so this is in its separate motion.
Okay, so that gets me to my point, though, is that when it comes time to vote the personnel article, and this is something I've never understood, is why isn't the personnel article a motion to reconsider the budget article? Because we're essentially changing the amounts we vote in the budget article.
Why isn't it a motion to reconsider? I don't know. We could.
Yeah, good. I mean, it's kind of bizarre because the wording is to actually change the amounts we just voted. Usually is what the personnel article reads, and
Well, you can amend the budget at any time during the course of the year. I mean, any kind of transfer that you would come in and make, you wouldn't consider the whole budget, you would just come in and.
right, but procedurally in town meeting, what we're essentially doing is taking an article later to change what we voted earlier. Is
Well, again, any transfer after the establishment of the budget at town meeting is the same thing.
yeah,
Right. But I understand your point.
yeah.
It'd be better, I guess, if paperwork were prepared
Yeah.
and it were all
Well,
calibrated.
it's at least nice to hear the information now, because usually it's like we get it 2 weeks from now that, oh, by the way, there's gonna be a wage adjustment or
All
something.
right, well,
Yeah, so it's,
there you go. Okay, so we were on 29, we took care of 31, right? 32, authorize and direct the Board of Assessors any sum of money available funds to reduce the tax levy. Again, a kind of fiscal placeholder of an article. Doesn't mean anything specific gets done in relation to it at town meeting, but any questions on it? 33 we heard from, Chair of Finance. Article 34, accept committee reports, dissolve old committees. Again, a town warrant and article placeholder. Anybody has any recommendations under that one, they can make them at town meeting. Anything else? Well, I thank you all for your cooperation and having this be my first effort at getting this done, and hopefully it was informative and provide some insight into what will come forward at town meeting. So consider the meeting closed. Thank you very much.